Okay, folks, so this week is chapter 10 and chapter 11. So let's look at what chapter 10 offers. And like I said, I've mentioned this in the previous. I'm going to browse through the most important slides, or rather, I'm going to just focus on the most important slides and browse through the remaining. So this is about healthcare information system standards, and obviously, as you must have already realized, because healthcare information or health data or patient data is very confidential. So obviously, there are very strict standards for storing the information, maintaining the information, sharing the information, um, and all that. There are certain development standards that have been set by the concerned or the concerned agencies, and you can read through those. And There's the International Organization of Standardization. They have certain rules and procedures, and there are other bodies or organizations that have specific standards. So as you can see here, we've talked about ICD-10. This is basically a coding system where when patient goes for a checkup or an inpatient visit, the diagnosis, whatever the diagnosis, there's a certain code, and that code is shared among that patient's insurance provider, doctor, nurse, lab, pharmacy. And the current code is ICD-9, and as I had mentioned, from October 2014, ICD-10 would come into picture, although it's still not totally applicable as of present. But ICD-10 has to every healthcare provider has to comply by the ICD-10 standards soon. Okay, so there's again, as you can see, there are codes. So if you go for a diagnostic checkup, it's D so and so to D0999 preventative. So these are the codes, the codes. So somebody goes for a preventative, this rather somebody goes for a diagnostic test. Depending on what specific his or her code would be, D something something something, and this would lie between this range. That's what it means. And then the National Drug Code, NDC. You learn some nomenclature, some terms. So just go over it. There's a lot of facts are in this chapter. So obviously you have to make sure that you understand and you remember these codes and all that. DICOM is digital imaging and communications and medicine. And again, like I said, this is all about standards in healthcare, information sharing, information storing standards. And if you go through this, you will understand the different agencies, different organizations that are involved in the standardization process, and what are the different standards and codes. Okay, so let's move on to the next chapter, chapter 11, and this is about security in healthcare. And as I had mentioned in the previous week, security is obviously a big issue everywhere, whether it's the finance industry, whether it's the retail industry, any industry. Security of information is very important. I mean, you must have heard of security breaches in these multinational companies, Home Depot, retail giant Home Depot, Target, and a lot of the banks. I mean, a couple of years back, we had Citibank being hacked, and about 1 million of their customers' confidential data was exposed. So when we talk about security of information systems, obviously in the context of healthcare, it becomes very important because we have patient data, not only their social security, their date of birth, their but the record about their medical history, which probably they don't want to reveal to third parties. They don't want to reveal to people that may take undue advantage of their health condition. So with that said, so this chapter talks about the security, and obviously any security program, you have to identify the potential threats. Okay, that's one of the basic steps that you can take. And for security, it's nothing different in healthcare. It's in different. It's like across industries where you have human threats, natural environmental threats, and technology malfunctions. Okay, of course, as you may have already realized by now, HIPAA sets security standards. Although HIPAA may not be all comprehensive, but HIPAA is a law that governs the security, or that has certain mandates that allow information, patient information, medical history to be shared in a secured and private private way. Okay. So just I think one of the things that you need to understand here is the role of HIPAA, the physical standards, administrative safeguards, technical safeguards. These are common across the board. Then HITECH, it applies to requirements directly to business associates, establish mandatory federal security breach, establishes new criminal and civil penalties, and enforce responsibilities for non-compliance. The HITECH expansion, if HIPAA covered entity or businesses who uses or discloses unsecured protected health information, they must notify each individual affected by a breach of health information. And there have been instances where there has been a breach of information and the proper actions were able to be taken, and basically identify why it happened, resolve the issue, and the people, if somebody was responsible, hadn't been taken care of what they were supposed to, they were obviously they were made to realize that, and proper action or appropriate action was taken against them, against their actions. One of the things that you have to understand is HITECH is an extension of HIPAA, where it's focused on digital information sharing. And when I talk about digital information sharing, obviously you know that it's all e-health information sharing. Okay. And you can read this case example. This is by implementing adequate security programs that adhere to health standards, healthcare organizations can avoid the necessity of potential harmful and expensive public notification. And this is a good case to study, where they talk about how HIPAA can enforce security standards. Okay. Now these are good, where you look at the administrative safeguard practices, then the contingency measures, NIST guidelines, and all that. And so yeah, that's technical safeguards. Then the certain levels. So this talks about passwords, do's and don'ts. Of course, you guys know this. But as you can see, this is applicable to any industry, whether it's healthcare or not, any context, hospital, clinic. So it's just that the fact that okay, the Center for Medicare and Medicaid Services, they have some recommendations for remote access. One of the biggest issues that we talked about mHealth a little bit prior weeks, and one of the things that is going on a lot about is mHealth is obviously when you're sharing information remotely, you have high risk of security breaches, and one of the biggest challenges for mHealth or remote healthcare management to grow and to reach the expectation levels that people have. One of the biggest issues people have to solve in the healthcare industry is how do we minimize the risk of security breaches when we are applying or utilizing remote healthcare. Okay. With that said, let's look at the articles, the readings that you have for this week. So one of the things is concern about security and privacy. This article is a short read, and it's basically talks about obviously the concerns of security and privacy, where the role of HIPAA a little bit. And it's an empirical study that was done, and basically this study showed that 2/3 of U.S. adults were concerned about breaches in security of their personal health information during transfer between healthcare professionals by fax or electronic. So obviously, as you can see, that patients are concerned, and one of the biggest challenges that healthcare industry is facing is to gain the confidence of patients. Okay. So the conclusion, the study shows that most U.S. adults are concerned about the security and privacy of their healthcare, and such concerns are associated with increased likelihood of non-disclosure of sensitive information to a healthcare professional. This underscores the need for intensified efforts to ensure the confidentiality, integrity, and availability of patients' personal health information in order to foster trustful patient-physician communication. Okay. So that's this paper. Healthcare industry ill-prepared to vicious cyber threats. So beginning of this video, I was talking about cyber threats in different industries, finance, retail, and one of this talks about is how ill-prepared healthcare industry is for cyber attacks and how they need to, realize the threats and take actions accordingly. As you can see here, the data breaches by industry, you see here 43.8%. I'm not sure how many of you have heard this, but Anthem, which is one of the largest insurance companies in the world, rather in the United States, let me take that back, in the United States, they very recently had a security breach, a major security breach, and if you want to Google Anthem, ANTHEM, and obviously there was a lot of brouhaha going on about how ill-equipped even reputed companies like Anthem are to handle security breaches. And I think that one of the things that we have to realize is that when we are talking about the healthcare industry, we've seen so far that they have been behind in adoption of technology, utilization of technology, implementation of technology. They've been far behind as compared to other industries, whether you talk about finance, retail, anything, oil and gas. So with that said, obviously it is a concern that how soon will the healthcare industry really advance itself to meet the needs and demands of security breaches, okay? Because as you realize that every time there's a security hack or security breach in an organization as big as Home Depot or Target or Anthem or for that matter Citibank, these are large-scale security breaches. People who are indulging in these sort of activities, they are super smart, and they are doing it with a negative objective, and they don't have good intentions, obviously. And the most difficult part of it is that once you know that you have been hacked and you figure out why you were hacked and you put in safeguards, there's always a better hacker or a better security breacher, if you will, comes up with a new way to hack into your system. So what I'm trying to say is that it's kind of, you have to be ahead in the game in order to be able to prevent yourself from security breaches. And I say yourself, meaning these big organizations. And one of the underlying concerns of security experts is how equipped is the healthcare industry or the organizations in the healthcare industry to be able to be ahead of the game and manage these problems or issues. Okay, so this talks about that, and it's interesting. Again, it's a short article. Again, privacy in the digital world. Obviously, we know that we all love privacy, but when we talk about health data, this talks a lot about HIPAA and HIPAA, how it enforces privacy, security. So it's a good read. You will understand more about HIPAA and how it's applied and what are the standards HIPAA has set. So that's why I included this article. Then the last one is assessing security practices. Of course, again, this is for small healthcare practices, especially clinics, and there talks about the parameters on which you can assess your security, security levels or security standards. And again, it's a good read, interesting read. So obviously, this week it's all about security, but at the same time, you have to understand that you have to put everything in the context of healthcare. So if you are from the finance industry, if you work in the retail, you understand how the security concerns are, what their security concerns are. Here in healthcare, we're talking about not only confidential information about individuals, not only their information perhaps about the credit card, social security, but their health information. So obviously, it is more sensitive information, if you will, and organizations have to understand, realize the potential threats, and come up with a way to not only able to counter those threats, but to be ahead of the game. Okay, so that's what it is about. Good luck with the chapters and readings for this week, and thank you.